Hello and welcome back to another video. In this one we're going to look at a wildcard draft that I've put together for Game Week 4. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so starting off with the goalkeepers, obviously I've got Flecken and I've got Fabianski. Now Flecken and Brentford's next two fixtures against Man City and against Tottenham obviously aren't the best, but after the next two game weeks, they go on a run of about 8 game weeks where they have lovely fixtures. So I think if you're playing your wildcard now in Game Week 4, you do want to look pretty long term, as obviously you won't have another wildcard to use for a while. So you don't want to be spending transfers on your goalkeeper spot. So I think you do have to look quite long term. Now, my kind of play style is to not spend money on goalkeepers, so I will pretty much always go for a 4.5 and then a 4 million option. So that's why I've gone for Flecken. He is pretty nailed as 4.5 million goalkeepers go. So yeah, I think he's a good pick. Next up, Fabianski is my cheaper goalkeeper. Now we saw Areola came off in the game against Man City in Game Week 3. Not sure how serious that injury is yet, but Fabianski looks like probably the best 4 million in terms of chances of playing. So I think it's a no-brainer to go for him if you're on wildcard. Okay, moving on to the defenders now. I've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, I've got Ezri Konsa, I've got Lewis Dunk. Then on the bench, I've got Pau Torres and Mosquera from Wolves. So Trent Alexander-Arnold, the Liverpool defence looks solid under Slot. They've obviously kept 3 clean sheets, so that's good news. But also, Trent has been very unlucky not to get an attacking return. He obviously scored in Game Week 3 and it was disallowed. He could have had an assist in the first game for sure. So I think attacking returns are coming for him and Liverpool's fixtures are just brilliant. Konsa, Aston Villa's fixtures are fantastic for the next kind of 3 game weeks or so. So I've definitely wanted some sort of defensive asset from Villa. Now, I've obviously got Pau Torres on the bench as well. He could have actually been any 4.5 million defender, really. Shouldn't really need him for the next 2 weeks, so it seems like a waste going for him, really. If you kind of have any other preference for a 4.5 million defender, then by all means go for them. But the 3 that are starting on the screen this week, you can also play next week because they all have fantastic fixtures next week. So if you wanted to go for, say, a Brentford defender at 4.5, like maybe Pinnock, maybe Rico Henry, then that also makes sense given that you don't need to play them in Brentford's next 2 fixtures, which are poor. But then from Game Week 6 onwards, you have then a starting Brentford defender to come in for their good fixtures. Now, Lewis Dunk, his next 2 are absolutely brilliant, so I think that he's good to have in the team. He's one that after Game Week 5 doesn't have the best fixtures, so you could look at potentially moving him on in Game Week 6 for a Brentford defender. That would be probably my plan, which is why I decided to start with 2 Villa defenders as opposed to starting with a Brentford defender, as that gives you quite a nice out from Dunk in Game Week 6. And Mosquera, he's more kind of a cheap long-term pick. I don't think there's many better 4 million defenders right now. The Brentford defender, Van der Berg, could be a good option, but we just don't have enough information that he's going to start right now. So at the moment, Mosquera is probably the pick of the 4 million defenders, I'd say. He and Wolves have brilliant fixtures from Game Week 9 onwards. Obviously, that's quite some time from now, but you're not going to want to use a transfer on a 4 million defender. So I think that he's a good pick for 4 million. Okay, moving on to the midfielders now, and it's pretty stacked in the midfield. So I've got Saka. His next 2 aren't the best, granted, but from Game Week 6 onwards, he has a run of 3 fantastic fixtures. So you could either go without him to begin with and then have a plan to transfer him in game week 6, or just start with him. I don't actually mind this game week 4 fixture against Spurs. It's more the City one in game week 5 that I don't like. But yeah, I'm fine with starting with him, but I get if you'd want to go without and then have a plan to get him in game week 6. Salah obviously has fantastic fixtures in the next few. Forest at home is pretty good in game week 4, and then game week 5 when Arsenal play City, Salah will be the best captain option, so got him in for that. Rodgers is a very nice cheap enabler at 5 million or 5.1, whatever he is now. Obviously Villa's next 3 fixtures are fantastic, so getting a cheap way into that attack is very useful. Eze and Mbomo are kind of very similar kind of picks. They're both nailed for 90 minutes most weeks. They're both on penalties, and they're both around that 7 million mark. I think they're both an absolute bargain. Obviously, as we mentioned with Flecken, Mbomo's fixtures aren't the best for the next couple, but from game week 6 onwards, they're fantastic. And Eze kind of has, well, he obviously has a great fixture this week with Leicester at home, but going forward, he has kind of a mixed bag. I think you can just keep him and play him throughout, given he gets the minutes and he's on penalties. So stacked midfield, but I like the look of it. Okay, and onto the forwards now. Obviously, you've got Stewart on the bench, who at the moment is a non-playing cheap option. Hopefully wouldn't have to play him each week. We may see him get some minutes, but at the moment he's not. So hopefully wouldn't have to play him, like I say. Then we've got Haaland and João Pedro. Now, I've gone for both Salah and Haaland. I think that if you wildcarded last week, you probably would have gone without Haaland. If you're wildcarding in game week 6, then you potentially go without Salah. I think this is kind of a time in the middle of those two where you probably would want to go with both. Haaland is a great captaincy option this week. He's got a great fixture. Next week it's Arsenal, which isn't the best fixture, but to be honest, he's almost fixture proof at this point, given the minutes he's getting and the way that City are playing. They're basically, all of their attack is to just make chances for him. So I think we could see him score a ridiculous amount of goals this season, as he's already proven. João Pedro, now he's been called up for Brazil as a late replacement. He plays on Wednesday early morning in Paraguay, and Brighton's game week 4 fixture is Saturday 3 p.m. against Ipswich. So there's a chance that he comes back a bit late from international duty, meaning that there's a chance that he gets reduced minutes or doesn't get a start, given that Ruta's there and can probably play that role. But until we know how many minutes he's played in the international break and in that game in Paraguay in particular, I think we pick him. The next two are just so good for Brighton, so I think, yeah, he'd be in my team. Okay, that wraps up this one. If you think I've missed anyone massive and there's any glaring errors, then let me know. But that is something similar to what I'd go with if I was on Wildcard this week. So if you like this one, do subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.